The past few years have been interesting, to say the least, and 2023 will probably be no different. Because of that, it's important to be selective with where you're investing abroad. Today, I'm going to talk about the 5 best countries to invest in Asia for 2023. I'm Reid Kirchenbauer with InvestAsian.com, and you're watching Nomad Capitalist. I've always said that investing in Asia is like investing in the world. Not only does it have 4.5 billion people on the continent, which makes up the bulk of humanity, but it also has a wide array of different countries to choose from. Now, a lot of the time when I say Asia, people think of specifically East Asia or Southeast Asia, but Asia in its true sense consists of everywhere from Turkey and Istanbul on the western end to Japan on the eastern end. And there's about 45 different countries between those. So that makes up a lot of different currencies, a lot of different countries, each with their own different level of development and investment potential. So here are what I think will be the best 5 countries to invest in Asia for 2023. I should mention that this list is in no particular order. Each country has its own investment prospects and there's no one investment which is the best for everyone. So depending on your own risk profile and personal circumstances, your preferences may vary. But with that said, let's start off the list. The first country that I'd like to talk about is Vietnam. Now, a lot of capital is moving out of China and into neighboring countries, not only because of travel restrictions, but also just simply because China is getting more expensive with its labor costs, utility costs, and prices and investment potential in China just is not what it used to be. And naturally, Vietnam is one of the first places to go since it shares a southern border with China. So there's all sorts of manufacturing activity in Vietnam. Companies from all over the world, from Samsung to Nike, are setting up shop in Vietnam. And along with a large consumer population of about 100 million people and rising, Vietnam really is a great place to invest. Now, you can't buy freehold property as a foreigner in Vietnam. You can only lease land and really all property on a leasehold basis of up to 70 years. This is true whether you're a foreigner or a Vietnamese national. All land is owned by the state. So if you want to buy property in Vietnam, you have to, well, I should use the term buy loosely. You should keep in mind that it's on a countdown to being worth 0. If you want to sell a leasehold title, for example, 20 years into a 70-year term, it'll have 50 years left on it, and you're going to need to account for that in the sales price. Real estate in Vietnam could appreciate in that time, but all things being equal, I do think a freehold title is a lot better. Stocks in Vietnam, on the other hand, are a whole different way to invest in the country, and I think there's a lot of good potential there. It's not an easy market to access, and you'll probably need to either have a brokerage account in a nearby financial hub like Hong Kong or Singapore, or even travel to Vietnam and set up a brokerage account yourself. But stocks have kind of taken a dip in the past 6 months or so, and there are a lot of good buying opportunities. The second country on this list is Singapore. Singapore is one of the wealthiest nations in the world, and because of that, it does not have a low entry price. Property in Singapore is about $20,000 per square meter, making it quite a bit more expensive than even New York, London, or Paris. So one of the most expensive real estate markets in the world. It doesn't necessarily make it a bad place to invest, although yields are low. Singapore's stock market, on the other hand, is a great place to access not only, Singapore, but all of Asia, since by having a brokerage account in Singapore, you can trade stocks in emerging frontier markets all over Asia. You can access the Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, all sorts of countries in the region with a Singapore brokerage account. And these are countries that you can't access through a brokerage account in the US or Europe, even through an interactive broker's account, which all things said, gives more access to more countries in the world than practically any brokerage that I'm aware of. So you're going to need to open a brokerage account in Singapore if you want to trade stocks in Asia's emerging and frontier markets, which makes it a great place to get started in Asia from that perspective. The third country on this list is Malaysia, which is one of the easiest places to buy land in Asia as a foreigner. In fact, it's one of only a select few countries on the continent where you can own freehold property as a foreigner with very few restrictions. For example, if you buy property in Thailand or the Philippines or even Singapore, apart from a very few rare circumstances, you can only buy condos freehold in your own name. Landed property is off limits to foreign investors. In Malaysia, this isn't the case though. You can buy practically any type of land in Malaysia as a foreign investor with very few restrictions, and you can even get a visa by doing it with the MM2H visa and all sorts of other programs that they seem to be rolling out as time goes on, which involve property investment. So Malaysia, great place to invest, especially in the real estate market as a foreigner, and it's about 10% the price of property in Singapore. I said earlier it's about 20,000 US dollars per square meter in Singapore, but it's possible to buy property right in the city center of Malaysia's capital, Kuala Lumpur, for about 3,000 US dollars per square meter. It's getting increasingly harder as time goes by, but still possible. So all things said, Malaysia is really a bargain. The fourth country on this list is Cambodia, which is one of the fastest growing countries in Asia. It's consistently seen its GDP grow by above 7% on average over the past 10 years, and it's one of the region's top growing economies. One of the things Cambodia has going in its favor is a well-established tourism sector. It's home to Angkor Wat, which is the largest religious structure in the world, and is part of a very well-established backpacker trail, and tourism trail in general, I should say, in Southeast Asia, which includes Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, and a lot of countries in the region. So Cambodia gets a lot of tourists who love visiting the country for those warm people and unique sites. And this is very unique for a frontier market. If you go to Papua New Guinea or Kenya, by the way, there isn't really a tourism market, so to speak. Cambodia, on the other hand, it's getting millions and millions of foreign capital brought in every year simply by people visiting the country and because there are things to see and do there. So Cambodia is really on the up and up, and many people say it's like Thailand back in the 1980s. It's in a similar stage of development. Cambodia's stock market is small but growing, and there's only exactly 10 listed stocks in Cambodia right now. And you'll need to make a personal visit to Cambodia to set up a brokerage account, so stocks are difficult to say the least. Real estate in Cambodia is where I think a lot of the potential is right now. You can right now buy centrally located real estate in the nation's capital of Phnom Penh for about $1,000 per square meter. It's getting harder as time goes by. Like I said earlier with Malaysia, prices keep going up as word gets out and demand gets stronger, but still possible to buy prime real estate in Cambodia for $1,000 per square meter, which is very cheap by regional standards and global standards in general. If you buy property in, for example, Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, or Manila, the Philippines, you'll be paying about $4,000 per square meter, so 4 times the price. And in Vietnam's case, you can't even buy land as a foreigner, as I mentioned earlier. So real estate in Cambodia, strong appreciation potential, high rental yields, 5-6% yields are easy to obtain in Phnom Penh, Cambodia in general. So great place to invest from multiple angles. And the fifth and final country on this list is the Philippines, which, like Cambodia and to a lesser extent Vietnam, is very much a play on demographic trends. The average age in the Philippines is 25 years old, which is the same as Cambodia. Vietnam, it's 30 years old. So these are all very young countries with a quickly growing urbanization rate, more people moving from rural areas into the city, which naturally increases demand for services and real estate. So if you're looking to buy property in the Philippines, you can only own freehold condos in your name as a foreigner. You can't buy land as a foreign investor. Locals can, foreigners can't. So if you're looking to buy property in the Philippines, condos are really your only bet. I personally think Manila is a bit overpriced for what it is, but there's lots of potential in the Philippines as a whole. Great opportunities for setting up a business. It's one of a few countries in the region where foreigners can own 100% of practically any type of company. So lots of potential for setting up an on-the-ground business in the Philippines. And if you don't want to fly to the Philippines and take the effort of setting up an on-the-ground company, I think the stock exchange is the best place to invest, the Philippine Stock Exchange, which you can access through a brokerage account in Singapore. There are a lot of great deals on the exchange, in my opinion, right now. Jollibee Foods is one of the most rapidly growing fast food chains in the world, which has set up branches in the US and is expanding internationally. There's all sorts of companies which have excellent growth prospects. if anything, just by sheer nature of the Philippines' great demographic trends, which, as I mentioned earlier, naturally boost a country's growth prospects, demand for real estate services, and is really good for a country as a whole. So those are the 5 best countries to invest in Asia for 2023. Nowadays, it's more important than ever to be selective about where you're investing, and I think those places have better growth prospects than just about anywhere else in the region.